So just a little background on me.
Mhm.
I'm a founder of my own consulting firm, which we provide inclusive leadership training.
Mhm.
Um, and we really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging.
Mhm.
And so in addition, we'll train the employees as well and provide strategies for the organization to be successful in launching their programs. So
Oh, and I
today I
put
wanted to
that
focus
on.
on the inclusive leadership side and kind of go into how leaders can provide more of an psychological safety amongst their teams to kind of help them, work in a more inclusive way, be more productive, and just, run more smoothly that way. But if you want, yeah.
Talking with the experts.
Hello, and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name's Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. And Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. And you can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today it is my pleasure to introduce you to Kerry Rosado. Now, Kerry is the founder and principal diversity consultant of Dyvergent Consulting Group. And she is also an elected official serving as a school board trustee with 7 years of experience in tech, healthcare, and education. She was named among the 146 inspiring women leaders of 2021 by Diverse In. She's a proud mother of 2 boys with autism and a neurodiversity advocate. She holds a Bachelor in computer science, a Master in business administration, and a certificate in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, with a book on inclusive leadership coming out later on this year. So, welcome, Kerry, and thanks for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me, Rose. Thank you so much. And for the lovely introduction.
You're welcome. Now, I understand that you want to train business owners and staff how to become more inclusive
Correct.
in the way that they do business.
Yes, that's correct. So the mission of my organization, Divergent Consulting Group, is to help both leaders and organizations build more inclusive cultures to help people thrive. And what we found in research is that oftentimes when we have that safe culture, people tend to stay at the workplace. So you increase retention. You also increase engagement because individuals are happy to be there. And you ultimately increase innovation, productivity, and ultimately all that leads to growth for the organization. So it's a win-win for both the employee and the employer. So there are definitely strong benefits to implementing a D&I program.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've had a lot of people on the show um, talking about leadership and how we need to make the workplace more inclusive because um, to lead is not necessarily to be the boss and to say go. It's like, let's go together. And I think we need to teach business leaders how to behave in this way so that there is better retention of their staff and staff are happy to go to work.
Yes, I highly agree with that. I know in my past, I've had my fair share of bad managers, but definitely that can definitely contribute to not being too happy in the workplace. And I really wanted to highlight how it's actually a leadership responsibility to build that psychological safety among the team, but also among the entire organization. Because oftentimes, the leadership team may have an idea up here what they want to do, but for whatever reason, it doesn't trickle down to middle management. And that's where you start to see kind of like a division, like Some business teams operate great because maybe they have, an incredible leader who really understands, how to engage people and motivate the team. And then you have the other teams that are suffering because maybe that leader hasn't been properly trained or for whatever reason, lacks that emotional intelligence. And it can be really challenging because, up here you're trying to establish a culture, but it's just not being communicated across all sectors of the organization.
Absolutely. And, diversity and equity are such a big thing these days. They have been since, the early 90s, I suppose, but it's becoming more to the fore now because, um, you know, there are people with learning disabilities that are quite capable of working in an office, for instance. They may not have all the skills that are required, but they can still take on some role. And the gender equality, between male female is, I guess, more accepted. I guess, they don't have that glass ceiling. There still is one, but it's not as prominent as it used to be. And then, of course, there's the LGBTQI aspect where people are being more accepted for their sexuality.
Yes, definitely. The events have taken place over the pandemic have really highlighted the importance of recognizing our own biases. And essentially, what a bias is an idea that we develop over time, a belief. And usually it's impacted by, our upbringing, our religious beliefs, if we have a religion, our life experiences, all that impacts the way we view the world and experience it. And it could impact our decision making and how we interact with others. So if we've never been exposed to a variety of cultures, because maybe happen to live in a very remote area that, maybe it doesn't have a lot of variety of cultures. And then suddenly we move to a larger area where we're exposed to all this culture, it can be a culture shock. And oftentimes, unconsciously we make decisions. We don't even realize we're judging a person. We're judging a book by its cover without really taking the time to get to know the individual, their capacities. And sometimes it's really hard for individuals who have never interacted with a person or say with a disability like autism to fully understand that this person has capabilities that they can function in the workplace. They may just need additional supports in order to do it, but they can still function and they still have skill sets to bring to the workplace. Or individuals perhaps who are LGBTQ, sometimes people can't get past that. And so they may judge harshly, or even gender. With tech, for example, there's still that gender gap in tech. It's still a very male dominated field, and it is still challenging for women to get into the field. And so oftentimes when they're being interviewed, maybe the interviewer, without realizing, may already be judging the individual simply by being female. So these are part of the trainings we provide, the unconscious bias training, to help people understand how these ideas that we have, these stereotypes we have about certain groups, can really impact the decisions we make. We may turn down a really good candidate because maybe in our mind, we feel we don't relate to the individual, but is that really the reason why we shouldn't hire them? Are they capable of doing the job or not? That's really the question we should be asking ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. I think that's been an issue for too many years, and it's still ongoing. And it's unfortunate because, as you say, if you're capable of doing the job and you have maybe some disability, or you're not of the same sexual preference, or you look slightly different because you come from a different culture. And yeah, you're right. People have preconceived ideas about what they want, and they don't look outside, their normal belief patterns. So it makes it tough for, people to get the jobs that they are qualified to do or suitable to do because of these biases.
Yes, I highly agree. And even that's just getting into the door. But once you get hired, oftentimes what a lot of companies face is that they don't fully understand how to embrace these diverse cultures. And so they may still end up losing that employee because they may not feel welcome or valued or respected within the organization. So that's where psychological safety comes into play, ensuring that you're creating a safe space, an inclusive culture where people actually feel welcomed. And it really is a leadership's responsibility. And it doesn't just sit at the highest level, the C-suite. It should trickle down at all levels of management. Even the most junior manager should have a full understanding on how to motivate their team to be more productive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And trouble is, though, but the very top level, by the time it gets down to the floor, the coal face, it's like Chinese whispers. It's not even the same thing that was thought about by the senior manager. And so that makes it really hard too, because oftentimes when the message is passed down, they put their own spin on it and then give it to somebody else who then puts their spin on it. And by the time it reaches the floor, it's not the same message that was, originally intended. So, and that is the leadership's responsibility to make sure that these messages are conveyed in a correct way.
Yes, I highly agree. Yes, definitely when it comes to communication, there are challenges. And you're right. The leader may imagine it a certain way in their mind, but then it doesn't get necessarily executed the way they intended to. That happens all the time in the workplace. So yes, I highly agree with that. But that's where it's important to work with all stakeholders to have all the right perspectives, make sure you work closely with your communications team and make sure they have a clear understanding of the message that you're trying to convey to your organization in a clear manner. So sometimes we get lost in ambiguity and wanting to sound a certain way. And just, it's really important to just be super clear about your intentions. And I think if you look at it from that perspective, you could be more successful in communicating the needs to the entire org.
Yeah, I like the concept too of managing upwards rather than managing down. And I like the idea of flat organizations, not hierarchical.
Yes, I agree for sure. Definitely organizations that don't follow that hierarchical standard definitely operate more efficiently because they're cooperating as a whole. They're taking all the stakeholders' input. They're not just making all the decisions at the highest level. They're really incorporating everyone. And so I think that's something organizations need to take into account. And that's where having a committee or a diversity council in place that has a variety of stakeholders representing different aspects of the organizations. You want to make sure there's representation from all the different employee resource groups because they all have a voice and should feel comfortable expressing themselves. So yeah, not all decisions need to be made at the top. They need to really do their work and research and really listen attentively to the needs of their employees.
Okay, so just you've worked in some top tech companies such as Microsoft and Amazon. And how did you help these businesses advocate for diversity and inclusion?
Yes, so in the case of Microsoft, they have a really cool program. It's an apprenticeship program, and it's dedicated to helping individuals enter into the organization. And they specifically focus on individuals who are don't necessarily have a degree, because oftentimes that could be a barrier for an individual because typically the employer will want you to have some type of engineering degree. And so we work with individuals who are graduating from boot camps who don't necessarily have a degree or who taught themselves how to code, or who are coming from individuals at universities that are lesser known. They're not the top Ivy League institutions where typically organizations want to recruit from. And they bring diversity. So we focus, that apprenticeship program focuses, on people of color, women, people of a certain age, because oftentimes someone may go into the industry but take a break. Often it's women who do this. And then getting back into the tech industry after several years can be very challenging because it's such a rapid industry that moves very quickly. And so creating the path and opening doors for individuals like that who are also career changers was the main mission of the organization. So I helped grow that.
Oh, wonderful stuff. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you've also helped empower communities to solve social issues such as,
Yes.
housing, immigration, education, restorative justice, and, you've led community rallies. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I had the opportunity to join a board for a nonprofit here locally in San Jose. It's called PACT, People Acting in Community Together. And the reason I joined the board was because one of their pillars was a focus on education. And so since I have children on the autism spectrum, I face challenges within the educational system and having to advocate for them to be included more with mainstream kids. And navigating the whole healthcare system as well. Other pillars of the organization were focusing on advocating for people of color, immigration, homelessness. And so part of my responsibilities involved, in addition to just raising awareness of all these issues, was connecting directly with public and elected officials because they're the decision makers. So I got to understand better what the power dynamics were and how as individuals, if we come together, we're actually very powerful. So it's really important, and I highly encourage anyone who really wants to change the society, their local society that they live in, is just get involved, connect with groups that advocate for social issues, and really, you can really move mountains together and really make social impact.
Yeah, no, I've been board members or on committees of different things like equity and sexual harassment and all sorts. I was a union delegate for a number of years, and yeah, I'm a great believer in everyone's born equal. I don't care what coloured skin you are or what your sexual preference is. Everyone's born equal. They all bleed red. No one's got blue
Yes.
blood or green blood. We're all the same. And
Yeah.
I get so angry, annoyed. I don't know when people, have these prejudices against all, others because either they don't understand or, that's the way they've been taught, or, they won't open their eyes or their hearts to other people, and their perspectives on life. And I think it's quite sad. And I think that's why we have wars and things in the world, because people are just hell bent on their own beliefs and they won't look outside, basically. And it just annoys me. It really does.
I highly agree with that, and I share I share your feelings too. It is quite annoying, and I encounter that in my work all the time. I will encounter people who are reluctant to accept that they have a bias. They think that they're in the correct way of thinking, and they can't get past it. Oftentimes, it's fear of change, lack of understanding, again, lack of awareness. If you've never been exposed to a variety of cultures, you are at a disadvantage, but that's still no excuse to mistreat people.
No, absolutely not. No, there is no excuse. And, I think the world would be better off if there were women leaders, presidents, prime ministers. I think the world would be a lot happier place than all this macho, misogynist stuff that's going on.
Yes. And that's why it's so important to have diversity at all levels of the organization,
Absolutely.
because that individual can bring that diverse perspective that's missing in the room in that moment within the leadership team. So oftentimes I will see organizations that are, predominant, let's give an example, predominantly male and have no female leaders among their leadership team often suffer because they lack that perspective. And so opening your minds, being more open and embracing it and understanding that the world is changing. We've seen a lot of changes over this year, especially in regards to equity and just being more open and accepting of different groups, marginalized groups. And so you need to adapt. Otherwise, you fall behind and suffer. And that can impact the growth of your organization. It impacts your productivity. And how your employees engage. And ultimately, it could lead to loss in profits, loss of employees. It really does hinder the growth of the organization.
I agree totally. I think it's if you don't open your heart, you don't open your mind, you're just stuck in a hard place. And I think the biases will kill you, to be honest. But anyway, have you written any books, Kerry, on the subject?
So I do have a book coming out this fall. It's about inclusive leadership, and the focus will be how leaders can really open doors for those marginalized groups. And when I say marginalized groups, I'm referring to those underrepresented individuals who are LGBTQ, people with disabilities, women, people of color, Indigenous people, Black, Latino, Hispanic. And so, because oftentimes these are the individuals who are getting left behind, not moving into those leadership roles. And there's reasons for that. And so, being cognizant of that and being more open, keeping an open mind and opening those doors for these individuals can really help contribute to that inclusive culture.
Well, yeah, well, I have to keep a look out for that. Sounds really interesting. Now, you do have a podcast?
Yes, I do. I have my own podcast. It's called Dyvergent Change Makers, and it focuses on just raising awareness of the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so oftentimes I'll invite individuals who are change makers, who are making social impact. Maybe they're advocating for women, maybe they're advocating for people of color or LGBTQ or people with disabilities or the Latino community, or they're just making some type of social impact to make the world a better place and more inclusive and accepting of different cultures.
Yeah, my passion, I have two great passions. One's domestic and family violence, and the other one's childhood sexual abuse.
Okay.
So I'm a great advocate against both of those, because I'm a survivor of both. So yeah, that's my great thing, and I do a lot of work online to bring awareness to the community about those things. So yeah, I'll have to go and check out your podcast now and have a bit of a listen.
Thank you.
And you're on YouTube as well, and
Yes.
you've got a Facebook group as also.
Yes, to raise more awareness of the podcast. Yes. So if you're more of a visual learner and prefer to see the podcast, you can go to YouTube. It's the same name, Dyvergent Change Makers, and that's where we host all of our recordings for each podcast. And we had a summit earlier this year, a DEI summit. So we have the recordings for that there as well.
Oh, perfect.
And,
all right. And I see you're on LinkedIn, and you've got Calendly, so people can actually book a consultation with you, and then you've got your email. So I guess your website would be probably the first place of call. So what could people find on your website?
They can learn more about the services that Dyvergent Consulting provides. They can learn more about me, my background. They can also access our podcast from there too, because it's linked in there. And they can also schedule time with me as well if they just want to inquire more information.
Perfect. Yeah. You got any last words of wisdom?
Yes. If you truly want to be more of an inclusive leader, be sure to stay very engaged when you're connecting with your staff. And what I mean by that is avoid being distracted by other things when someone is speaking. Avoid being distracted by your phone. So turn it off or set it to the side. Avoid being distracted by checking your email, and really be attentive and be an active listener. By doing so, you're really showing respect to the individual and being engaged. And the rest of the team will pick up on this. It's important to lead by example when you're a leader. And so just implementing these little things can really help you connect better with your team.
Yeah, and I think it's just good manners anyway.
Yes, that's true too. Yes.
All right, Kerry, thank you so much for joining me. I've so enjoyed our conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope we can do this again sometime.
Perfect. Thank you so much.